Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Export to Japan podcast. And for this particular episode, we are going to be looking into the world of financial services in Japan. Some of the reasons why you may want to consider entering the Japanese market, looking at perhaps some of the opportunities out there, and also some of the support programs that may be available to help you on your journey into Japan. And to help us with today's discussion, I am delighted to welcome a very long-term contact of mine. And in fact, I was thinking back, and I think Naomi and I sort of dread to say this because it makes me and potentially Naomi sound so old, but we go back around 20 plus years, I think, from when we first met and first started working together. We were both wearing probably slightly different hats back then, but doing a very similar thing of helping British and international companies into the Japan market. So, Naomi, after all these years, I am delighted to welcome you to the Export to Japan podcast.
Same here. It's always been a pleasure working with you, and I'm so glad that we're doing this together this time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And thank you for making your time available, Naomi, to be with us today. So to get the ball rolling, could you kick off by telling us a little bit more about FinCity.Tokyo? We can see the logo and the branding behind you there, and it would be great to learn a little bit more about that organization. Why was it established? Who is involved in it? What are the objectives, etc.?
Yeah, okay. So FinCity.Tokyo, we will be celebrating our 5th anniversary next month. So yeah, we've been in existence now for nearly 5 years. It was very much created under the Tokyo governor, Ms. Koike's vision to revitalize Tokyo as a financial hub. And one of the recommendations that came from her expert panel was Tokyo didn't have an organization to drive that. So FinCity.Tokyo was created. We are a small team. We sit next to the Tokyo Stock Exchange building. Don't know if you're familiar with that part of the town, but yeah, we have our little office there. We are about 10 people in our team. We're very fortunate to have Mr. Hiroshi Nakaso, who used to be the deputy governor of the Bank of Japan, as our chairman. And we are a public-private partnership. We are mostly funded by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, but we also have private sector membership of about 50 companies and associations. And yeah, what we do. So under Koike-san's vision to revitalize Tokyo as a global financial hub, so we needed to promote Tokyo. I mean, promotional PR activity was simply lacking. So promotion, but we don't want to be kind of one-sided. We want also are equally keen to hear from foreign firms on what further changes need to be implemented to make Tokyo a good place to do business. And also we collect those voices, deliver that to the right part of the government in the form of policy recommendations, advocacy, and also attracting foreign firms to Tokyo. That's what I'm mostly involved with at FinCity.Tokyo.
That sounds amazing, wonderful. And just one point to pick up on there, you mentioned that you are both sort of private and public sector funded and involved. So, and you mentioned membership there. So could you tell us a little bit more about that? How does membership work and what's involved in that, and what kind of companies are members?
Okay, so we have now over 50 members. They are very diverse. You see the large incumbent Japanese financial institutions. They could be the MUFG, the Mizuho, SMBC, and also, you know, the securities houses like Nomura Daiwa. You have that camp, but you also have some of the foreign and Japanese startup scale-ups. I should maybe say Revolut is, I suppose, no longer a startup, but a scale-up, aren't they? Revolut, for example, are one of our members. So yes, it consists of both large financial institutions and startups domestic and international.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
and they
Thank you. Thank
pay
you.
the membership dues. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
Understood. And we'll maybe come on to a bit more detail about that in a second. So, but in terms of the progress you've made then, so 5 years, I think you mentioned since the
Mm.
formation of the organization, how have those 5 years gone? And are there any sort of success stories or any stories you can share with us of what's been going on over those 5 years?
Yeah. So as I said earlier, before FinCity.Tokyo was created, there simply wasn't really much of a promotional push from Tokyo. So I think we have been able to achieve a fair deal in that regard. I mean, of course, COVID has hampered us from traveling overseas, but yeah, after travel restrictions were removed, so for the last 2 years and a half, we have been traveling quite extensively, doing forums, events, being at, for example, the Singapore FinTech Festival. So that kind of presence, I think Tokyo's presence is being gradually kind of felt and input into the financial services firms abroad. So promotional wise, I think that's what we've been able to achieve so far. And I spoke about membership. It has been growing. When FinCity.Tokyo was created, I think it was somewhere around 30 or so. So it's a reflection of the interest, the traction that we're gaining from firms in Tokyo, both Japanese and foreign. And also, I think one highlight would be that from last autumn, when Prime Minister Kishida traveled to New York, he made this speech about making Japan an asset management-led nation. So it's, I think, the first time that the central government is realizing the importance of connecting the surplus wealth in this country to pockets where more investment is required, and the importance of asset management as a conduit of capital, that being recognized by central government and having more of a one voice to promote that. In the past, it's used to be like just Tokyo's attempt, but now it's like you have a full chorus of starting right up from the Prime Minister, which is great. I think it's we have been advocating the importance of asset management from since our inception, but our vision being reflected in the central government's growth strategy. I think that's quite an achievement. And
It
also in
is.
terms of
Yeah.
attracting foreign firms, we have been able to support entry into Japan by some of the large firms. For example, we're now working with a major Canadian asset management company, a global hedge fund, and a wealth management fintech unicorn firm. So we're really excited to actually see companies coming this way. And yes, there was a British company, Impacts Asset Management, who came to Tokyo making use of the Tokyo government's grants, which I might discuss later. Also, DBT team support. And also, I should make a confession that I have known Impacts from my time at UKTI or TIT. And yes, I've been kind of continuing that relationship, and I have been telling them about the subsidies that are available, other programs by Tokyo Metropolitan Government. So really good to have this British company here with concerted effort from both sides.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, and congratulations on that progress. It sounds like you're making great progress, and I'm sure there's a lot more still to come, building on the great work that you're doing. And certainly, you touched on perhaps some of the support available there, and I would definitely like to come to that in a subsequent question, so we can really understand what may be available in terms of help and support. But just to keep the flow going here, you mentioned asset management there a couple of times, and I know that you are also involved in another organization called JIAM, which
Yes.
is the Consortium for Japan International Asset Management Center.
Yeah, it's a mouthful,
Could
isn't
you just It is a little bit of a mouthful. Jayam's a lot easier to rolls off the tongue a little better, definitely. So it summarizes it well. But yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about that organization as well, that would be helpful, please.
Yeah, that's very much like a precursor to FinCity.Tokyo. So when Governor Koike was convening her expert panel, our FinCity.Tokyo founder, a guy called Aitomo-san, he was involved in that panel, and he kind of had the foresight that there ought to be some organization to drive it. So he kind of created it at a very grassroots level. That was JIAM. And since FinCity.Tokyo was created, in a sense, FinCity.Tokyo kind of takes over that JIAM's role, but JIAM still continues to exist because it's got the beauty of a small, nimble organization, which really consists of a team of about 5 people, really. And if we have great ideas, we'll just do it. Whereas FinCity.Tokyo, it's a little bit more formal. So the two kind of complement each other. And so JIAM does a lot of activity around areas that FinCity.Tokyo is not so not that engaged, like topics such as art and finance. How do the two kind of mesh together? That's something we have been working on recently. Did events because there are some interesting fintech companies in that area, using blockchain distributed ledger in enabling fractioned ownership of art, for example. So looking at quite edgy stuff that FinCity.Tokyo doesn't pick up. So that's what JIAM does. I double hat both organizations, and a few of us do.
Great. You're a busy lady, clearly. But no, that's good. Thank you for sort of elaborating on that and explaining that. Now, thinking about the audience that will be listening into this podcast and this discussion, there will obviously be companies out there in the financial services sector who already have Japan on their radar and are thinking about Japan and may have made some of those early stage inquiries into the Japanese market. But there may be companies out there that haven't even considered Japan yet, and it may not necessarily be on their radar. So from that perspective, Naomi, what would you say are some of the reasons why international firms should be considering Japan and looking at Japan at the moment? What are some of those sort of high-level thoughts they should be thinking about when they consider that?
Yeah. Okay. So if you're in financial services, I think it's very much the current government's push to make Japan a more asset management-based nation. Might think, Japan, it's a very sophisticated market. There are some large asset management firms, but as I was saying earlier, the government is very serious about first to make the Japanese people more aware and actually invest to kind of build the assets to take them through the ever increasing longevity of Japanese people, but also to connect surplus capital to opportunities of growth. And I suppose that's where, for example, private equity, venture capital firms could be coming into Japan. And it's not just those two. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity in what we call the alternative investment space, not the traditional equity and bonds, but new investment opportunities like real estate infrastructure, private equity, etc., etc. So there are, I think, openings of opportunities in the alternative investment space. that's very much kind of focused on financial services, but on much broader terms. Of course, as Japan as a market with large scale, and also in the fintech space, there's one British company, Tractable, which operates in the insurtech space. They have been able to win some of the Japanese so-called mega P&C insurance companies as their clients. And you will have to invest quite a lot of your time in building relations. But once those relationships are built, you could be really serving the titans of Japanese industry, which is a good badge of approval for your firm to grow globally. So yeah, it takes time, but invest in those relations, and then you have very long-term business that can thrive.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And what a great example to hear about in that case. That's really good to hear. And sort of on that topic, there's a good summary you've given us there of the sort of current situation in the Japanese market, and lots of very encouraging positive reasons around why companies should consider the Japanese market. Just picking back a little bit on your experience, going back over those 20 years since we first met and started working together, what trends have you seen in the market, bringing it up to where we are today, and therefore looking ahead, what could you see in the years coming? Could you just give us a little overview and a summary of that, please?
Okay, yeah. Yes, looking back 20 years ago, I remember when a prime minister by the name of Junichiro Koizumi, he was very much pushing Japan to have more FDI, because FDI in Japan then represented a tiny 1% to its GDP. And so the idea was kind of to double it to 2%. And that was, I think, when we thought, it could be a good entry point for foreign firms to come in, because Japan then was still kind of recovering from its banking crisis, and assets were very cheap. And it always felt like companies taking advantage of that situation coming in. So there were quite a few private equity firms that came to Japan at that time. But I think there was a lot of fear or caution on the Japanese side. Was kind of seeing these foreign investors buying Japanese assets cheap and then maybe selling it on expensive and just kind of making the margin there. But that was 20 years ago. And in a sense, it kind of feels similar, that now Japan presents a good opportunity for foreign firms to be more active. But I think this time it's quite different, in the sense that it's, as I was saying, based on the realization that we need more investment in growth opportunities, in actually really strengthening the Japanese companies, and also this increased trigger on Japanese companies to look at their governance, and which means companies could be concentrating more on their core business and selling non-core business. So from the governance point of view too, I think there's potentially a lot of opportunities for foreign firms to be part of Japan's transformation. Yeah.
Yeah, very good, very good. Thank you. Well, I think you're doing a great job of setting the scene very nicely to explain why overseas firms should now be looking at the Japanese market and coming into the market. Let's drill down a little bit more into detail now of the question of, are there any support programs, any incentives, anything that overseas companies should or could be aware of where they can get help or support of any nature within this particular sector when they're looking at the Japanese market?
Yes, for financial services, particularly the asset management and fintech areas, which are very much the focus of the Tokyo Metropolitan Government's Tokyo as a Financial Center vision. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government has subsidies available for firms who are setting themselves up in Tokyo. So the subsidy could go up to 40K pounds for year one at the point when companies are setting up the office. So your bills, for paying your lawyers or accountants, headhunters, etc. For those items, this subsidy can be utilized, and it doesn't finish there. So there's also another set of subsidy that helps companies grow from year 2 and year 3. So for those subsequent 2 years, it's roughly 50K pounds for each year. So I think it can help you offset quite a lot of your initial cost of setting up in Tokyo. So there's these subsidies, but it's not so straightforward. Being government money, there are various paperwork that you need to furnish, etc. And it does feel a little bit like a maze too, because there are also other support programs by the Financial Services Agency, or for asset management firms, or for more general support. JETRO is also very active. So there's a lot of goodwill and actual support, but it's sometimes a bit hard to navigate this maze. So at FinCity.Tokyo, we have a program for helping companies onboard in Tokyo. So kind of navigating the various support programs and connecting them to it. So we can actually, we're working with a subcontractor who deals with the individual companies, but they can help you navigate through the various support programs, connect you to the suitable service providers, and also this project for helping foreign firms. It's been around for some years. It was directly run by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government a few years ago. Then there were different consultancy firms involved, but we have been making this program, how should I say, more intensive. Not a big number of companies benefit from it, but it's more bespoke and intensive. For example, recently we have been supporting a Northern American fintech company set up in Tokyo, and they wanted to work with the digital agency, and they wanted to access some of the data that they had. And digital agency, of course, has very stringent rules on, eligibility of firms accessing the data. So we have, or rather the contractor, they've really gone into pain of having numerous phone calls with the agency to find out what sort of setup would satisfy them. So you can see the intensity of the support that we're providing. Yeah. So yes. So as I said, it's not something that we can kind of do for many companies, but yes, we hear companies' aspiration plans for Tokyo, and we kind of vet them how sound is their business plan, and once we select that companies as a credible company for FinCity.Tokyo to support, we can make that kind of support available to them.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, that sounds amazing. And to be honest, those potential chunks of money you're talking about there, up to 40K as part of the setup operation, and then potentially up to 50K for year 1 and year 2 to support the growth. that's significant amounts of support that could be available. So I would certainly, reinforce the message out there to anyone listening into the podcast today in this sector that is serious about the market. Keep that very much in mind and potentially reach out. I mean, in terms of the next step for companies, Naomi, is it that they should initiate a discussion with you at FinCity.Tokyo and you could then give a little bit more detailed
Oh,
advice and have a
yes,
discussion with them
yes,
about how it may be eligible? Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Great.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Well, we'll
We're
make
on
sure.
we're on LinkedIn, so please follow
Great.
us
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
LinkedIn. I mean, I have my personal account, but also FinCity.Tokyo has its official account, and we put quite a lot of news stories up there, both our activities and also what's going on in the financial services industry here. So please do follow us and contact us.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really good. So yeah, I would urge anybody that is serious about the market in this sector to obviously reach out to FinCity.Tokyo and Naomi and have that discussion and see what support may be available because that is an incredible amount of support. I've been doing this a long time and seen many support programs, but that's certainly a very, very generous one compared to lots that are out there. And certainly on the topic of setting up a business in Japan, going back over my 20 plus years of experience, it was in year 2000 that I came over and set up my first software company in Japan.
Team
And I have to
Studio.
say, yes, that's right, Team Studio. You remember, absolutely. Still alive and kicking and doing very well out there all these years later. But you remember very well, Naomi, yes. And I remember then establishing that entity and getting going. God, I nearly lost the will to live several times going through the bureaucracy back then. But I
Yes.
think one of the big trends I've seen and noted doing this work is that there have been significant efforts to make it easier and less bureaucratic now
Mm.
to set up operations. I know it is considerably easier. That doesn't mean it's particularly easy, as Naomi indicated. There are processes to go through, but I think that's that's the case in most countries around the world. And it's the prize is certainly worth it. It's worth that effort, no doubt about that at all. So and of course, here at Export to Japan, just a quick plug to mention that we are also available to help. We have our team of partners that can help with establishing entities, recruitment, advice like that too. So we can partner up. Naomi and FinCity.Tokyo obviously have their network they can plug you into, and we can support that program as part of Export to Japan as well. But no, that's very, very exciting, Naomi, and certainly very, very tempting. I guess to give a bit of a balanced view on this, we've given a very encouraging picture of the trends and the opportunities in the Japanese market and the support that is available to help companies in this sector. Um, I guess to give a balanced view, you and I both know that Japan can be a complex market to break
Mm.
into. It's
Mm.
not necessarily the easiest one. There are, language issues, business culture issues. There's a big time zone difference and geographic difference and things. So, to give a balanced view, what advice would you give for international companies that are looking to come into Japan? What steps should they take? What should they prepare for? What should they be aware of at a high level when they're thinking of entering the market? What advice would you give and thoughts would you share on that?
Yeah. Okay. So, in response to the support programs that I outlined earlier, we do get contacted by quite a few foreign companies. Some of the companies have a they have done their homework. They have looked at, yes, Japan. What value can my company offer to Japan? So they've done that thinking, and who should they target in order to deliver that? I mean, of course, being outside of Japan, your assumptions may be wrong, but I think it's kind of important to have that kind of your hypothesis, your story of why my company should be in Japan and what value it can add. I think as opposed to that kind of very well thought through plan, we do sometimes see companies a bit more random in their approach. So yeah, I think having that kind of good planning, preparation. That's vital. I mean, we have good contacts, so we can connect companies, to local contacts. But I think it's always important to have that story of why this particular company wants to speak to this Japanese company. So yeah, that kind of thinking, I think it's vital.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And with all the various companies we've helped over the years coming into the market for the first time, that is most definitely one of the most significant points, And sort of linked to that a little bit, I think one of the great lessons I've learned from doing business with Japan is the kind of difference in timescales of how
Mm,
a lot of Western companies and people think versus how Japan thinks, and sort of having a strategy and a plan that is longer term, I think fits much better with the Japanese mentality and Japanese thinking, isn't it? And being prepared to come to Japan with that long term thinking, both in terms of being patient about setting up in Japan and how it takes time to get
mm,
traction and build relationships and invest in those relationships and build trust and therefore get results. It typically
mm,
takes a little bit longer and requires that investment, but I think the results are well worth it when you get there. But having that slightly long-term thinking and long-term planning, as well as that kind of story and that rationale, I think is really, really important. So yeah, very, very good advice. And the point about doing the homework, having doing the homework, doing the research, and of course organizations like FinCity.Tokyo and JIAM and Export to Japan, we can, and DBT through all their services, there's lots of help and support out there to do that research and that homework. But getting that right is all part of that process as well. So I would echo those thoughts entirely. Yeah, very good. Very good. Okay, Naomi. Well, I'm sort of conscious of the time, and we've covered certainly all the topics that I wanted to cover, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and your wisdoms on that. I think we've learned a lot about the background and the trends, and certainly the current position in the market and the reasons why companies should be considering the Japanese market, and then the amazing support and infrastructure that is around there to help them on that journey. So thank you for that great kind of summary and that overview. And just to recap, but I hope for people listening in, I hope that's given you a very good overview and an insight and has whet your appetite to think more about the opportunities in Japan. And as we mentioned, as a next step, feel free, as Naomi invited you, feel free to look up FinCity Tokyo either through LinkedIn or just anywhere on the web that you can find them. And Naomi, she will be very happy to help support you with any questions that you may have and further guidance. And of course, you can do the same through us at Export to Japan. You can always reach out to us and we can connect you with Naomi directly or any route like that if you have any further questions. But other than that, Naomi, wonderful to catch up with you again after all these years.
yeah,
Let's
same
not leave it
here.
another 20 years, okay? Before we do business together again.
Well, I
But
hope
no,
to
it's been
see
great to
you.
catch up with you.
Yeah, hope to
Yeah,
see you in
absolutely.
Tokyo
And
or in London. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
great.
I should be coming over to Tokyo again very soon. I think next month
Oh,
I plan to
okay.
be over,
Oh,
and
wow.
I know you're often. I think you were over here in London last month, weren't you? So
Yeah, yes.
yeah, our paths will cross again. I'm sure very soon. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you again for all the amazing work you're doing with all the various hats you're wearing. It's all part of that same mission of supporting those international companies coming into Japan and obviously bringing value to Japan as well through bringing those companies in. So fully appreciate all the great work that you're doing and all the support that you're doing. So
Well, thanks so much for having me today.
absolute
So
pleasure.
it's been
And
yeah, it was a very interesting discussion. Thank you.
good. Yep. And thank you everyone for listening in. I hope that's been a very, very valuable insight. If you wouldn't mind hitting that like button and of course, subscribe to us through the various channels that you're listening into the podcast, and then you will become aware of all the new podcasts that we've got lined up to bring you. But thank you once again, Naomi. It's been great to see you. And thank you everybody for listening in. I hope you've enjoyed this edition. Thank you so much.